If you think talking about mental illness is scary, imagine what happens when we don't talk about it. Join the conversation. Visit letstalkstigma.org.
I am an orientation and mobility specialist.
I'm a lawyer.
I'm a firefighter.
I'm an advocate.
I'm a sister.
I am a mother.
I'm a friend.
I am me.
I have bipolar disorder. Depression.
On borderline personality.
I'm not embarrassed.
1 out of 5 people lives with a mental health condition.
We're all people, and if we talk about it, there's hope.
Hello, I'm Karl Shallowhorn, Chair of the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition, and on behalf of the coalition, I would like to welcome you to the 6th in our series of Facebook Live events, this time focusing on the state of stigma in mental health, proactive and progressive ways religious communities are addressing the mental health crisis. Our faith leaders are at times the persons that individuals go to when experiencing a mental health crisis. This places them in a situation where they have to know how to respond appropriately, as well as when to recommend that that person seeks professional help. So today we're going to be exploring this topic with 4 representatives from our local faith communities. Before I introduce our panelists, here are a couple of housekeeping rules. Our program is for 1 hour. During the course of this time, if you have a question or comment, please type it into the text box and we will respond accordingly. Today I'm joined by our 4 panelists who will each provide their own perspective on this topic. First, Reverend Nancy Rosas is the pastor of Pilgrim-St. Luke's United Church of Christ in Buffalo. She does her work from the wide pulpit that begins in the parish and goes into the local community and vice versa. She has worked for over 25 years as a local and national educator, community leader, writer, speaker, mentor, and is a co-creator of Spaces for Connection, Self-Development, Advocacy, Accompaniment, Witness, and Transformation with various communities, especially multicultural and interfaith communities in the U.S. and also in Latin America. Pastor Nancy's work is intersectional and rooted in love, justice, compassion, intentional relationships, creativity, and joy. Next, we have Dr. Khalid Qazi, founding president and senior advisor, Muslim Public Affairs Council of West New York, and inaugural chair of the Council of Trustees for the Islamic Society of Niagara Frontier. Dr. Qazi is the inaugural president of the medical staff of the Catholic Health System and professor of clinical medicine at the UB Medical School of Biomedical Sciences. He's also the chair of the Town of Amherst Community Diversity Commission and a life member of the Islamic Medical Association of North America, Islamic Society of North America, and Islamic Society of Niagara Frontier. Dr. Qazi has also achieved the designation of Master in the American College of Physicians. Next, we have Rabbi Alex Lazarus Klein, who also serves as a rabbi of Congregation Shir Shalom. A trained chaplain and gifted teacher, he's actively engaged in all aspects of communal life and helping people with their everyday struggles to intricate details of synagogue governance. Rabbi Alex is a respected leader in the Buffalo area, serving on many local boards, including the National Federation of Just Communities, the Network of Religious Communities, and the Jewish Communal Relations Council. He works with leaders of all faiths to improve the quality of life in West New York and beyond. And finally, we have Kathy Aman. Kathy is the chairperson of the Community Mental Health Committee of St. Joseph University Parish. The committee tries to create an environment of hope, understanding, and compassion so as to increase the acceptance of all individuals and families affected by mental health concerns. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you for joining us today for this important conversation. So I want to start off with our first question. This is for everyone. I just want to ask how you think our faith communities can help to reduce stigma associated with mental health. I know that's a big question, but how can our communities help with this issue that we've had for so many years, addressing stigma? So maybe we'll just start with Reverend Rosas.
Yes. So I think that we can start by acknowledging that there is a stigma, breaking the silence about mental health. I also think that speaking from the Christian perspective, acknowledging our complicity in this stigma, because our cultures and our faith has shaped the way that people see themselves. And so our spirituality is by spiritualizing our struggles, um, and the way that we go about life can help to encourage that stigma. So breaking the silence is very key. I also think that educating the congregation, pastors educating themselves about mental health issues and impact in their communities, and speaking about that, because that then marks how we include and how we see ourselves. So I think that breaking the silence is one of the first steps.
Thank you, Reverend Rosas. That's very important. So, Dr. Qazi, in terms of the Islamic community and with your work within your organizations, how would you say we can address stigma?
Thanks, Karl, and thanks to organizers for including in Islamic perspectives in this discussion. I think faith communities certainly have a role to play and a responsibility, in fact, to play their role. And as far as Muslim community is concerned, I think what I can say is, number one, that we highlight the scriptures from Islamic tradition and the teachings of our Prophet Muhammad that clearly speak to overall well-being and mental health of individuals. So the scriptures, Islamic scriptures, and lessons from Prophet Muhammad's life form the basis of teaching in this regard. The second is that it is important, and we do this to a reasonable degree. I think we need to improve, but we certainly, especially in the last several years, have made great strides in providing necessary and helpful resources to the community, which does not stop at the spiritual level, but continues with assisting to access the psychological and medical professionals, plus providing peaceful, confidential, and non-threatening avenues to freely talk about mental health and well-being. And as my colleague just mentioned about openly speaking about it, our imams and clergy have also used the Sabbath prayers for this purpose and delivered Friday sermons from the pulpit highlighting the Islamic perspectives on mental health and create forums for education, advocacy, and acceptance of this issue, and at the same time destigmatize this challenge. The objective is to focus on building the awareness, education, and guiding people towards understanding, recognizing, and dealing with this issue while destigmatizing the problem to the extent possible.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Qazi, for that perspective. And so, Rabbi Alex, as far as from the Jewish perspective, how would you respond?
Well, first I'm going to respond from the human perspective. This is an issue that affects every single person. This is not an isolated thing. Everyone struggles at times. Everyone doesn't have answers and has felt less than. And it's really important to think this is not like an isolated issue, that mental health really, really impacts every single person. And I consider my number one duty as a rabbi of a congregation is to create a safe space for anyone who enters into it. Religious communities are open to everyone. And when people walk in the door, they should feel that they don't have to hide pieces of themselves in that process. I think a key part for how to create that space, and this is not just a Jewish way of doing things, but I think every single one of the panelists here and other religious communities can agree that when people walk in, we should see them as individuals. Make sure to acknowledge them, to learn about them. So often places of religion are places that are anonymous, that people walk in and they're not seen. We need to really do a better job of seeing one another. We also need to create a care structure environment around us so that when people come in, and this is one of the challenges that religious communities face, we're really ill-equipped often. We don't have the proper tools for handling, especially people that are really, really struggling. And we need to have a referral system. The Anti-Stigma Coalition is huge in this, and I'm so grateful to have that as a partner. We need to know that we can't really do everything on our own. And we need to create the environment that congregants and staff, clergy, all need to see this as part of their vital role. That when someone comes in need, we need to do whatever we can to help them and not make them feel less than. This is a challenging thing because we have very small staffs on religious organizations. But if we see this as our number one focus, I think at least we can start showing that this is a place that people are accepted, no matter where they are coming from.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Alex, and especially for the fact how you started with saying that this is a human perspective and it's universal. You're right about that because mental health conditions affect all of us in some form or fashion, and many in our lifetimes. So we know that our faith communities are also affected with their membership. So Kathy, what would you have to say responding to this question?
Very similar things to the rest of the panel, but the most important thing, I think, and a very simple thing, is to be able to say things out loud, not to be able to say schizophrenia, to be able to say bipolar and anorexia, anything, not to be ashamed of it, to be able to say it out loud. That gives other people permission to say these same things, that no topic is not okay to talk about. The other thing that our committee has done is educating our community, or we try to. I think education will be key to destigmatizing this situation. So we've had formal presentations, or we have bulletin articles, or we have bulletin inserts on topics of mental health. And we have a strong resource table as well. So to be available, as everybody was already saying, and to be able to talk about it out loud, I think those are, very important. And to have information as to distribute and or to inform ourselves of as well.
Thank you. And of course, I know, and I'm going to actually have a follow-up to that a little bit later, Kathy, but I know your parish has been involved for many years with your committee and the work you've done. And it's been wonderful to witness. So one thing I want to talk about now is just faith, right? And then, of course, faith means maybe different things to different people. There's the idea of faith in oneself. And then there's also, though, the idea of faith in a creator, a power greater than oneself, something or someone or an entity that is able to get us through some really difficult times. And I know when you talk about mental health and wellness, spirituality certainly is a part of that. And many individuals do rely on their faith to manage their mental health. So Rabbi Alex, in your experience, what do you see as maybe your your members' experience with faith and how they use their faith to help their mental health?
Well, I think underlying in older traditions like Judaism or Islam or Christianity, there's actually quite a bit of acceptance of people that are going through things. You know, some of our best prophets had mental health challenges. Today, they probably would have been treated very differently. They wouldn't have been able to found religions. They wouldn't have been able to be heard. So often in the pre-modern world, when someone was kind of bipolar or faced other challenges of what we would identify today, they were really embraced and celebrated. And I think that's really key thing to point out. I think that being in touch with something beyond yourself, a spirituality, to show that we are connected to each other is really important in whatever challenges that we're facing, that religion really is a solid thing, something that precedes us and shows that we're just one of many, and that's okay. I'll tell you a particularly analogy that comes up in the Talmud, which I never thought in terms of mental health before these questions. It's about this term called Pardes. Pardes is an apple orchard, or what we call paradise. And the rabbis in the Talmud say that there were 4 individuals that went down to Pardes to find God. One went crazy, one converted out, one committed suicide, and one found their way to God. And this is partially kind of a warning of how dangerous spirituality can be. But I actually think it's to show the broad spectrum that it's okay. We're going to have different paths. And that all these 4 individuals were all strong, wonderful individuals. And this is different outcomes, different possibilities. And that finding God is still worth that struggle. It's still worth it to look towards our spirituality. So I think there's a lot in our religious traditions, and certainly it gets beyond the stigma that is relatively recent.
Thank you, Rabbi Alex. Dr. Qazi, so in terms of, let's just maybe first of all, your faith. How does your faith play a part in helping you with your mental health?
Yeah, I agree with Alex to a large extent. I believe faith really plays a big role in creating positivity and mental health stability. And in general, Islam and perhaps all faiths teach about coping with difficulties in life and work through difficult times. In our holy book, Quran, the Last Testament, there is a clear scripture saying, after every hardship comes ease. And people believe in that. There's a very famous and renowned 9th century Muslim polymath by the name of Abu Zaid al-Balkhi, who mentioned in his work a treatise that is very popular in Muslim world, The Sustenance of the Soul, that intentional psycho-spiritual practices nurture a resilience that functions as a preventive measure. And he places great emphasis on mental over physical health, illustrating that all human beings are prone to psychological distress, and the absence of consciously developing psychological strength or the lack of seeking assistance after dysfunction can lead to unnecessary and significant suffering. And he enunciated this over 1,000 years ago, and that forms the basis of modern psychology as we know it even today. And I would like to make one more point, if I could. Faith traditions and cultures vary. However, at the human level, there isn't much difference. They're pretty similar. And the example of a famous Muslim spiritual theologian, Naqshbandi, I might take a few seconds to mention that several merchants came to meet him for advice and had some questions for him, but he was tending to others, so they had to wait. After waiting for a few days, they thought the sheikh is too busy, and they started to leave. And as soon as they were leaving, he stopped them. He told them, and pointing to each with finger, the answer to your question is this, the answer to your question is this, and the answer to your question is this. And they were amazed, they were flabbergasted, they didn't know how he knew what their questions are going to be, and he was giving them the accurate answers. So they asked him, how did you know? Did you read our minds? And he said, listen, every human is created from Adam, and Adam was created from dust. We all come from the same source. We tend to have the same issues. We tend to have the same problems, and we tend to have the same answers. So there is this universality that underlines the issues of mental health, mental illness, and mental well-being, notwithstanding the many ways in which they manifest in different cultures or different faith traditions. So yes, faith tradition does play an important role in mitigating this problem, and the Muslim community is trying to do its part in it.
Thank you, Dr. Qazi. Thank you for that excellent illustration that you shared with us. I just want to remind our viewers that if you're just tuning in, I'm Karl Shallowhorn from the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition, and I'm joined by Reverend Nancy Rosas, pastor of Pilgrim-St. Luke's United Church of Christ, Rabbi Alex Lazarus Klein, Rabbi of Congregation Shir Shalom, Dr. Khalid Qazi, founding president and senior advisor of the Muslim Public Affairs Council, Western New York, Kathy Aman, chairperson of the Community Mental Health Committee of St. Joseph's University Parish. Now, remember, you can visit our website, letstalkstigma.org, to take the pledge against stigma. Also, if you're connected with a business, organization, or faith community, you can become an organizational member. You can find information for this on the website under the membership tab. Also, if you have a question, please remember you can type it into the comment box and we will try to respond. So we're going to continue with that same question about faith and go to you, Reverend Rosas, in terms of your understanding of how faith ties in with mental health.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that faith plays an important role in shaping people's life, the way that they see themselves, the way that they see their bodies, the world, and the way that they see God and God's action and presence in their lives and in their world. So I think that, for example, the images that people have about God, how they see God and understand God, if it is a God that is judging, controlling, taking care of everything and leaving them with no responsibility for their own life and connections and participation in their healing and health. So faith helps to shape that. And also from the Christian tradition, something that I found very useful as followers of Christ is the image of Jesus, through the whole story that we have in our sacred text, is that what we see is his whole full humanity. And when talking about mental health, it helps me, and that's what I also share with my congregation and with people in the community. That we see before Jesus was crucified, when he was at Gethsemane, the Bible describes with details Jesus going through mental anguish, Jesus feeling lonely and abandoned and experiencing what we know now as anxiety and feeling her soul being troubled, feeling sorrow to the point of death, feeling abandoned even by God. And so in that story also we see a very human Jesus who we see as the one who embodies the presence of God for us. We see that Jesus in that mental anguish. So that helps me and helps me to share with people that we can access our faith, and look at Jesus, the model that we follow, as someone who embraced his full humanity, who allow us to see the limits of humanity when we go through struggles, and who also asked for help when he needed. He asked his disciples to pray for him, to stay with him, um, to care for him. So that also helps that role that faith plays in our lives, reminded us that we are interconnected, that we, as the Rabbi and Dr. Qazi were saying, that we are human. The one thing that we have in common that is universal is our humanity. And so that we are allowed to be fully human and to ask for help and to be connected. So faith can play a role reminding people that it is okay to be human, that it is okay to ask for help, that they are not alone.
That is so true. I believe that we are not alone, and we do have to ask for help. There's an old expression: "A closed mouth doesn't get fed," right? And I think that is so true. So Kathy, when you think about faith and mental health, what comes to your mind?
Well, our faith highlights the dignity of every single human being, and the worth of every human person cannot actually be overstated. So when we truly believe this about ourselves, when we believe that we are worthwhile and worthy, when we believe that about ourselves or about others, then all the other conditions that we have are pretty irrelevant. Our faith also teaches us that Jesus understands suffering, similar to what you were just saying, Reverend Rosas. Jesus understands suffering, and he joins us in our struggles. And so as a church, then we need to take that mission on ourselves and help others. We need to stand with those who are rejected, stand with those who feel marginalized, stand with those who feel abandoned. And I think that that's what our faith is calling us to do. And I think that people respond to that. They understand that, Jesus suffered and that is an ally for them. And I think they use that in their recovery as well.
Thank you. So I want to shift now and ask, this question is specifically for Reverend Rosas and Rabbi Alex. As far as what do you do when your members, your congregants come to you asking for help? And we know, as I said before, many times, our faith leaders are the first ones that people do go to when they have help, even if it is with a mental health concern. So what is your response when someone comes to you needing assistance? I'll start with Rabbi Alex.
Well, to open my door and listen wherever they are. I mean, I think that's really key. And I think it's good modeling too. The congregation needs to see it's okay. that your door is open, that people, wherever they're struggling with, they can come. We have in our tradition the story of Abraham and Sarah with an open tent that anyone can enter. And I think that's really key. And then it's to try to create the systems in place. I mean, I'll use the pandemic as an example. At the beginning, when everything was unfolding a year and a half ago, we were most worried about people that were isolated, often suffering from mental health issues. And we created a system where people wanted to help, and we gave them the phone numbers to help. And these conversations that started in March of 2020 are still continuing. It's created a whole new avenue that I'm very proud of the congregants for stepping up and showing that we are a caring community and that we need each other more than ever.
And Reverend Rosas.
Yeah, similar to Rabbi Alex, I think that offering reminded people that I am there for them and that they can call me, they can text me, we can do different ways to communicate, and that they can come as they are. And together, I offer them a space to be themselves and just as they are and come as they are, and to listen with compassion and without judgment, and to hold space for their stories and holding space for their laments, for all the range of feelings that they might be feeling, and sometimes even just to cry and just to provide that space when people may not have no words for what they are experiencing, and just to sit with them. I think that also a way that I have been able to support the congregation is by showing up as a human being, as a leader in the congregation, but as a human being who journeys with them, that goes through similar, human limits, and to share my own stories about mental health. I think that have created a trust and also an encouragement for people to speak up. And by also opening space for people in the congregation to listen to each other's stories, so that when they come or they reach out to me, they know that it's not only me, but together we are creating a culture where everybody get to be fully human, where we get to connect and to encourage each other in the journey, and especially during this time, during this pandemic time, seeing the rising of mental health struggles, it has been even more important to not for the congregation not only to have me as a resource, but as Rabbi was saying, to have a whole system that supports them, that when I have reached my limits of what I can help, that I can refer them to places in the community. So I think that is providing those spaces where people can be who they need to be, and to provide not only safe spaces to be, but also courageous spaces where they can be who they need to be in that moment.
Which I think we just had a question come through through our comments, and just as a reminder, if you are watching, you can feel free to submit a comment by typing in the comment box. But I want to ask this, and this I'm going to leave this open for anyone who would like to respond. But many times when we are talking about people who might be perceived as having, say, a more severe disorder, where there are delusions, and typically, when we talk about delusions in a clinical sense, we're talking about a person who might have a belief that, as they say, isn't grounded in reality. They may have a belief that they are something that they are not, a power greater than themselves, that kind of thing. However, in a cultural context, and it was stated earlier, that in some faith traditions, I believe you said it, Rabbi Alex, in some faith traditions, people were seen as being special, if you want to call it that way, for what they were exhibiting as far as their mental health, and so how do we draw a distinction between that in terms of like when there may be a mental illness, when there may be more of a cultural experience or religious experience? How do we draw the line, and when would you perhaps want to say intervene and then try to refer that person to a professional? I don't know, that's a long-winded question, but if anyone would be willing to answer that.
I think the question is whether they're a danger to themselves and others. You know, people all throughout their life have differences of how they see reality. You know, we think about it for people that are aged. You know, so often it's really painful to talk to relatives that say, you know, my relative, she can't remember that a person died or is always asking me about it. And there's a certain repetition. But I think that happens throughout people's lives. You know, my job in general is not to say, no, your reality is wrong. But if there is some type of line that I'm worried about safety issues, that's a separate discussion. I think that we create kind of a leeway to listen. And that's one of the techniques, by the way, when we're talking about dementia, is just to listen, to go with whatever the reality is. And that's okay, not to try to change it, which you're not going to be able to anyways.
Yeah, or as they say, you never challenge those beliefs. Right. I mean, which is true. Anybody else have anything else they want to add to that?
I would say similar to what Rabbi Alex said, is to listen. And for me, it's always to assess that safety of the person and those around them. And also, I think that it helps to know where the person is coming from, because in some cultural and spiritual settings, what the person might be saying, it makes sense from their ancestral spirituality and practices. And so maybe for the person listening, if they don't share that particular vision of the world or of God or of the world, that might sound like delusion. That may sound like out of reality. So I think that that listening is a great place to start and to offer the person to, regardless of what they're saying, to listen with compassion and respect. And I think that for me it would be, again, the same assess about personal and communal safety. Yeah, but to listen with compassion and with care and with openness.
Thank you. I think that idea of compassion is crucial, that we all can learn from, and when holding that space for someone who might be in need of a listening space. So Kathy, I want to ask you, and like I referenced earlier, St. Joseph's University Parish has done work. Actually, let me pause for a second. I want to reintroduce our panelists, just for those who might be tuning in. I'm here with Reverend Nancy Rosas, pastor of Pilgrim-St. United Church of Christ, Rabbi Alex Lazarus Klein, who is the rabbi of Congregation Shir Shalom, Dr. Khalid Qazi, founding president and senior advisor of the Muslim Public Affairs Council of Western New York, and Kathy Aman, chairperson of the Community Mental Health Committee of St. Joseph University Parish. So Kathy, your committee within your parish has been doing work for many years. I had the privilege many years, it seems like ages ago, to speak at one of your Friday services, but it was even going on before that. So what's a little history behind your committee in your parish, and what prompted you to do this kind of service to not only your faith committee but the wider committee? And I think in a way that was before its time in some respects. I'm not saying that other faith communities weren't doing this, but you were in West New York. You really were doing something that other churches weren't doing.
Right. So in 1998, I believe it was, St. Joseph University Parish conducted a survey. And one of the last questions near the end of it was, who are we not reaching out to? Who are we missing? And 3 women answered that question and signed their names. Sister Jeremy Madura was our pastoral associate. She always credits them with signing their names to their survey. But they answered it that we were not reaching out to people that had mental health problems. So she gathered the 3 women together and began to meet with them, and that started the Mental Health Committee. And it grew relatively quickly after that. Other people were interested in the topic, just hadn't signed in on that. And so there's a variety of people on the committee, often people in the profession. They do this as part of their interest and help. Sometimes it's people that have a mental health diagnosis themselves, or sometimes it's a family member. And it's a nice grouping of people that work. And we've done a lot of education and a lot of some services directly for people that might be struggling with mental health diagnoses right then. Sister was always a key part of it, and she's recently left our parish to do work in her own community. So we're in a bit of a flux now, but we're hanging in there and doing a lot of our work the same. We just don't have that key person that a person might reach to her to talk it over, and then she would reach out to the people on the committee. But again, with the pandemic, everything changed anyway. We weren't meeting in person as much and things like that. So it's been an active committee for over 20 years, and I think it's made its part of our community in a very beneficial way.
Well, I know, like I said, even from my own personal experience, having been to some of your programs and even the one that was done recently that was online,
Right.
You're definitely making an impact. And that's wonderful that, geez, 23 years ago,
Right.
you had members who had this vision of what they wanted to see happen. So that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Qazi, in terms of your community and the Muslim community's response to mental health, I know you made some reference earlier, but so what's the Muslim community doing for those, say, having mental health challenges? How do you help others? You're muted, Dr. Qazi.
Sorry, I had muted myself. Not enough. I think we don't have enough resources to be able to address all the needs that we have in the community. However, there are programs, initiatives that have been started by many national organizations, as well as local mosques and groups, to address and assist with this mental health issues. One of the major initiatives, it is called Muslims Thrive, is a nonprofit organization that supports the empowerment of communities. And they have, and it started relatively recently in 2016. And so far they have certified over 2,000 individuals in what they call adult and youth mental health first aid. So they have made inroads into various communities across the country. There is Khalid Center, which is a psychological and spiritual community wellness center advancing the issues of mental health and mental well-being, which has also been received well across the communities in the country. And Institute of Social Policy and Understanding, as well as Islamic Medical Association of North America, has many programs to address it. At local levels, I think the Islamic centers and mosques play an important role, as do other houses of worship and faith communities in helping the parishioners in that regard. We've been very fortunate that we have a significant number of medical professionals within our community that have been instrumental in forming these support groups and assist the houses of worship in connecting the resources with those who need it. And we meet on informal basis more often than we meet on formal basis, but we do interact with people every Friday, and issues are addressed in a informal way more often. But there are also a couple other groups locally. One is Rahma and the other is Rumi Wellness Center that address this issue, especially in case of the women. So yes, there are some resources, but there aren't enough resources. There's no question about it. And if I could add one addition to the earlier question about that dichotomy between the religious experience and the professional in the case of delusion, I think it's a very, very difficult area to address that easily. And I think Alex and Reverend Rosas addressed it very well, the empathy part. And the other part that we have been able to use is the family structure and the support structure, which is available within the family or within the mosque that comes into play in that regard. But it's a very difficult area.
Thank you. So we had a question come in from our audience, and I want to direct this to Kathy, first of all, because like I said before, you've done such a wonderful job with your own parish, but I'm also going to open up to the others. The question is, how do you suggest parishioners establish their own ministries within their own churches or places of worship? So what would your recommendations be for someone who wants to do that?
First, I would recommend that you make your presence and your willingness known in whatever means of communication works best in your congregation or your community. I would also familiarize yourself with some of the resources that are in the community, because you don't want to have a person come to you with a problem and you feel overwhelmed. Even having like crisis services phone number handy, having 211, which is a good information and referral system. Any of the ones, NAMI and mental health advocates, Anti-Stigma, there's a lot of good information out there. So you'd want to just be a little bit informed yourself. And remember that you're not actually providing a professional service. You are joining somebody on their journey. And that joining makes a big difference. So whatever you're doing it as a support. You're not in charge of their full recovery. You're just there joining them with it. And that is a very important step that you're taking. But it's not that you are fully responsible for any of their problems that come your way. You just want to join them and lead them to the spot that will help them. Often when we get a referral or a call, I try to know where I'm sending them, that it's going to be helpful, that you're not sending them on a wild goose chase, that you can be sure that what you're sending them to is going to be helpful. So I guess I would just start by saying, let yourself be known, let your committee or whoever is in your congregation that's interested in doing this, that you're willing to do this. And I think it'll take steps from there.
Thank you. That's wonderful. So Reverend Rosas, how about you?
Yeah, I think that making the community aware of who to go to during the congregations, besides the pastor. Like, at PSL, we had in the past a mental health support group, but also I think, and I will include one of the questions that also came about teaching and preaching about mental health issues. So when people hear from the pulpit, you know, sermons and teachings about that, they feel more comfortable to seek help within the church. I think that so it's part of educating the congregation, and like in our church, we have several people that have gone through the first aid mental health training with Karl, and also within their national church, there is a clear commitment to mental health wellness. So there is a mental health community that if people come to us, if we, besides, you know, the local resources that we can point them to, we have this national network if people are addressing us from other places in the nation. So we have those resources available to them. We have at the Board of Deacons people that are great listeners. Other resources are places and opportunities for people who are struggling with any mental health reality to connect and offering spaces where they can learn and practice um, uh, things that can help them to nourish resilience and hope and be in community. So we offer those spaces to places of nurturing hope and community and also resilience.
Thank you. And Rabbi Alex, how about you for being able to, any suggestions you might have for resources or ways that you might share the message through your preaching?
Well, let me put in a plug for End the Stigma. Max Donatelli has come and spoken at our synagogue a number of times. He's wonderful. It's one of our great resources in our community and something I'm extremely proud to have connected to and to learned about. I think that we are, as an overall Buffalo, Western New York, we are really lacking. Before we were talking about what to do with someone with delusions or has challenges coming in, the external community is very poor. Mental health services are extremely poor in this area, and we need a lot of extra work so that people, when they come in, they're not re-stigmatized by just going into these facilities that we send them to. And this is one of the areas that I hope that this group, as well as all of us, can work on. The other area that we're really needing is trauma, a real understanding of trauma. There's not even psychologists locally that are really trained especially in extreme trauma, and this is really lacking. From a Jewish community, I just also want to put in a plug for Jewish Family Service. It's one of the resources, not just for the Jewish community, but for the broader community. It does mental health first aid and also has a team of psychologists and others care professionals to help with this issue.
Thank you, Rabbi Alex. So we are actually running short on time. We have a few minutes left. So I do want to take the opportunity to allow each of you to maybe share some closing comments and find a way to maybe wrap up, from your perspective, how we can look at this topic and maybe what your key takeaways would be from our conversation. So let's just start with Kathy.
Okay. So I think that this post-pandemic time is a perfect time. It's a perfect opportunity for anybody to broach these topics of anxiety and depression in your community. We all have a deeper understanding of worry and isolation than we did before the pandemic. So I think it's a really perfect opportunity. If you wanted to start something in your own congregation, it's a really good time to do it. If any faith community did want to join with our committee, we would be very open to doing that. What you were talking about, Rabbi, and some of the advocacy, that's one of the directions our committee has been kind of looking at. And we'd be very happy to join with any of the other groups. And also, if you're starting a committee in your own congregation, if you're in the audience, our committee would be happy to help with that as well. If you wanted to come to one of our meetings once or just talk it over with any of us, we'd be more than happy to do that. So thanks for this opportunity today to speak with all of you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Reverend Rosas.
Yes, I will echo what Kathy was saying. And in this post-pandemic reality, we have a lot of healing work to do. We need one another. I love the call to collaboration. That would be also my call to say we need each other in this work. So the PSL, Pilgrim-St. United Church of Christ, is committed to this healing work and to work with community to support. And I echo what Rabbi Alex was saying about trauma. We have gone through a lot of stress and trauma that we need to heal. So we're going to need each other. You have in me an ally on this work. You can join us at 335 Richmond Avenue in any of our services. And we offer a space that is welcoming, where you can be who you are, no matter where you are on life's journey. You're always welcome.
And if I could just say, I am a member of Pilgrim-St. Luke's United Church of Christ, and I've been a member now for 33 years, and it's been a wonderful church community and very welcoming, like you said, Reverend Nancy, to those living with mental health challenges. Dr. Qazi, how about you? Any last comments?
I just want to thank Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition for putting this panel together, and I'm grateful for my co-panelists, Reverend Rosas, Kathy Aman, and Rabbi Alex for joining in this constructive discussion. I guess the takeaway I thought were, in my opinion, three components to this issue: the physical, the emotional, and the cognitive component. The way we think about what happened, and it comes out clearly that there is no harm in physical manifestation of a sadness or a given situation. In fact, it could be beneficial in certain circumstances. It's part of being human. It's part of our emotional response to the situation. However, how we think about what happened to us is critical in how we process that particular situation, whether it be grief or a similar situation. So the cognitive approach to the mental health is critical. And part of being happy is an integral part of that. So I fully agree that we have limited resources, and therefore we don't have any choice but to join hands to address this issue and, walk together, talk together, and pull together. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Qazi. And Rabbi Alex, you get the last word.
Well, first of all, thank you, Nancy, Kathy, and Dr. Qazi, Reverend Rosas, sorry, and Karl as well. What a wonderful discussion. I'm so glad to be here, and I'll leave you with the words of Hillel, which is true of a lot of our faiths. He was asked to teach the whole Torah standing on one foot, and he said, do not do unto others what you would not done to you. That we should treat each other with care, just like we would want to be treated.
Which is truly, I believe, something that we're all called to do. And if we were all able to do it a little bit better, then I think our world would certainly be a much, much better place. So thank you for those last words, Rabbi Alex. So as a reminder to our audience, we need you to take the pledge to end stigma by going to our website at letstalkstigma.org. If your organization would like to join us in our cause, there's information on the website as well, and you can click on the Members tab to find out more. Together, we can make this happen. And so once again, I'd like to thank our panelists, Reverend Nancy Rosas, pastor of Pilgrim-St. Luke's United Church of Christ, Rabbi Lazarus Klein, Rabbi of Congregation Shir Shalom, Dr. Khalid Qazi, founding president and senior advisor of the Muslim Public Affairs Council of Western New York, and Kathy Aman, chairperson of the Community Mental Health Committee of St. Joseph's University Parish. And as always, I'd like to thank our folks behind the scenes, Mike Telesco from Telesco Creative Group for his hard work on getting us all up and running, Matt Smith, chair of the Anti-Stigma Outreach Committee, and Carol Doggett for the Mental Health Advocates, as well as the Anti-Stigma Coalition for her support as well. So on behalf of the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition, until next time, I'm Karl Shallowhorn. Be well.